Good afternoon and welcome to the How Can We Boost Gender Balance digital event organized by the ACE Emerging Professionals in London and the Southeast Region Committee. I'm Wojciech Szewczak and I'll be your host for today's event. I'm the chair for ACE Emerging Professionals Committee, where I provide a platform to develop emerging professionals' awareness of industry trends, shaping the future of consultancy and workplace. Today, we will talk about gender balance. As you know, achieving gender balance within organizations promotes equality, diversity, and inclusivity. Also, a gender balanced environment creates better cultures, improves team performance, and nurtures better managers and leaders at every level. The purpose of this digital talk is to discuss what can we do to boost gender balance in our organizations. I'm looking forward to this digital talk, but before I have few housekeeping information to share with you. First of all, it's an interview style event with the Q&A section in the second part. To ask questions, please go to chat in your control panel. You can ask questions throughout the event and do so anonymously. Another thing is that we'll be recording this webinar and we'll send you a link later today so that you can refer to it, back to it, or just forward to your colleagues. That's all in terms of housekeeping. So let's move to our guest. I'm delighted to introduce Ann Francke. Ann is the Chief Executive of the Chartered Management Institute, which I'm a proud member of. And also Ann is an expert on gender balance and author of the Create a Gender Balanced Workplace book. Welcome, Ann. And I'm honored that you accepted our invitation and kindly agreed to share your insights with the ACE Emerging Professionals community.
Thank you, Wojciech. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, Ann, so I think we can start now. I would like to understand a bit more about what inspired you to research gender balance in the workplace and then write a book. As a chief executive of the Chartered Management Institute, you could write about so many other management and leadership topics, but you decided to focus on this particular one. So why?
Yes, it's a great question, Wojciech, and one that I get asked a lot. So really, there are two reasons. The first is a personal reason. So before I joined CMI as the chief executive, I spent over 25 years in the corporate world, first with global companies like Procter & Gamble and Mars, and then laterally with a series of FTSE 100 companies. And obviously, the further I got in my career, the further up the ladder, so to speak, I noticed that there were fewer and fewer women. And in the latter stages of my career, when I was in the C-suite, I had the experience of being the first and only female on several occasions. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't the best experience. There was, I felt very othered, I was excluded, I was bullied, and obviously I was the only woman. So it wasn't a pleasant experience. And I actually learned then firsthand how important gender balance is and what it's like when you don't have it. Because I should say in my, up until then, until I got very senior, I had experienced a lot of gender balanced workplaces and I knew what a difference it made. So that's my personal reason. And obviously, I speak with many women who have experienced similar things. My professional reason is that actually when you have gender balanced workplaces, you have better workplaces, full stop, for everybody, men as well as women. You have better line management, you have better outcomes, you have better cultures, and it really is, it lifts everybody, not just women. So as the chief executive of the Chartered Management Institute, where we're trying to promote turn accidental managers, as we say, into conscious and capable leaders, is one of the best things you can do to promote better line management. So obviously, professionally, I support it as well. So those are really the two reasons for writing this book, which is here.
So I have to say that I read your book, and I found your book very practical, very evidence-based, and more importantly, inspiring, which led us to this event today. So briefly, Anne, could you remind our audience, like, what are the benefits of achieving a gender-balanced workplace?
Yeah, so there's absolutely phenomenal bodies of evidence now available. So we really shouldn't be questioning the business case for gender balance. But really, there are 5 business reasons, and of course, this is excluding the moral reason that it's the right thing to do. So let's just look at the business case. The first is it boosts your financial results. So there's macroeconomic evidence for that. That comes from the World Economic Forum and McKinsey, and they estimate that at a global level, gender balance is worth an astonishing 12 trillion a year GDP boost if we had 50% economic participation of women. On a micro level, McKinsey studies again show that if you are in the top 25% of companies for gender balance, you will outperform in profitability terms your competitors that are in the lowest quartile by a factor of 25%. And that's actually gone up over time. So that's the financial performance. But if you peel the onion, why is that? It's because gender balance improves, like I said, employee engagement and culture and trust. And it improves it for everybody, men as well as women. It also drives better, more innovative team decisions. So you'll just make better decisions, and there is evidence to support that. You'll raise the ethics of your team, and very importantly, you'll reduce the risk. So that's another reason why you get better financial outcomes. Importantly, it improves your ability to attract and retain talent, because obviously better decisions, better cultures, more inclusive cultures makes your company the kind of place that people want to work. And conversely, if you don't have it, you're going to lose a lot of people. And lastly, increasingly, we know that the buying decisions in this world are made by very much so made by women as well as men. So in many sectors, women are responsible for 80% of the decisions. So it does bring you closer to your customers, your communities, and your brand. So really, if you add all that up, that's 5 great reasons, you should be asking, why wouldn't you do this?
Absolutely. And I have to say that I think I'm allowed to say that gender balance makes business sense,
Yeah.
right? And achieving gender balance can only bring benefits to our organizations, right?
Absolutely. For everybody, men as well as women, very important.
Very, very important. So now, could you describe the term glass pyramid and share with us why it is important to know the gender pay gap in our organizations?
Sure. So I use the term glass pyramid because if you ask me to describe what is the shape of women in the workplace today in 2021, I say it's a glass pyramid. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you look at the bottom quartile, and many of you are engineers, so you're quantitative individuals, bottom quartile of your organizations. Now, in many organizations, unfortunately, engineering organizations still struggle, but you'll have about 50% female. So that is increasingly the case in many organizations, irrespective of the sector, because people have been paying attention to recruiting balanced numbers of men and women. And especially if you look at university, you have equal numbers of men and women going to university. The women in the whole are getting better grades. So those entry level positions and the lower level positions are pretty balanced. But then what happens, you move up a quartile and say you had 50-50 male versus female, suddenly that ratio shifts and it becomes maybe it's 40% female, 60% male. And then you move up another quartile and it shifts again. And maybe it's 30% female, 70% male. And then when you get to the top quartile, it shifts again. And maybe it's 25% female, 75% male. That is the glass pyramid. And when you look at the top, the CEOs, you have about 5 or 6%. And unfortunately, that's a very stubborn pattern. It's been with us for decades. And the only way you will know that that pattern exists, and that's actually, it is the biggest driver of the gender pay gap. And so what you really need to do is look at the gender pay gap, look at your own glass pyramid in your own organization, because what you will see is that pyramid, and to fix it, it's not enough to recruit more women in the entry level positions. You have to retain them. You have to promote them through the ranks and pull them up to the top. And that's the way you're going to fix your gender pay gap. And you also have to hire them in to senior roles, right? So that's why it's so important.
So looking at the gender pay gap data, the sectors with the largest pay gap are financial services, construction, and engineering. As majority of our audience is working in the consultancy and engineering companies. So how can we get more women into the engineering industry to close this gap?
Yeah, it is such an important question, and it's even more important since COVID. So first, some statistics, and they're pretty depressing. So the UK, the percentage of female engineers in the UK, and by the way, I also sit on the board of the Engineering Council, which holds the charter for engineers in the UK, for all the 36 professional bodies. So the UK numbers were a few years ago 9%. Now they're 12%. In the US, I think a decade ago it was 3%. Now it's 12%. Those are both dismal numbers. And we're really not moving the needle. And yet that's even more important in COVID, because if you think about the Build Back Better industries of green energy, infrastructure, technology, these are all industries where engineering and obviously construction play vital roles. And we have a skills gap. And unless we get more women, and I should say ethnic minorities, to take up engineering, we're going to really suffer in our efforts to build back better. Now, why don't we have those more women? Well, one is we have I think it goes back to that glass pyramid. So even if the base, the bottom quartile, is smaller in engineering companies, maybe it's only 25 or 35%, we're not pulling them through. And I know that something like 57% of women who study engineering at university are no longer in engineering by the time they would be chartered engineers. So you have a huge dropout rate. Why? Number one reason, culture. So we have to create more inclusive cultures. And we can talk about how to do that a bit later on, because that's everybody's job. It's not just your CEO's job. It is their job, but it's your job too. The second thing I think we need to do, again, very important, is to get more women studying engineering and studying technology. And there, it's about linking engineering to solving real problems. So, what we found, and studies have shown this, women actually want to solve real global problems. They want to solve climate change. They want to solve healthcare and poverty and food shortages. And linking engineering to these vital outcomes, these social outcomes, I think is an incredibly important thing that we need to do a much better job of, because ask them, what is engineering? They picture, a hard hat and a railway line. Or unfortunately, you still have these super wealthy scions of tech companies building bigger spaceships. But actually, engineering is about better healthcare, better social justice, better climate change outcomes. And
adding value to the society.
Yeah, to get more female engineers. So there's lots of things we can do at a societal level, but also at an organizational level.
So, Ann, you just shared with us some interesting insights that we are losing 57% of women by the time they achieve the chartered status, whether this is with ICE or with other institutions. So what do you think? Like, how can we bring them back to the sector, right?
I
Because
think that's a
they.
great question.
Mhm.
So I think, that we should actually embark upon a project and find out all those women that were on that roll, they were on that register, right? And
Mhm.
and reach out to them and say, hey, come back, rejoin. And there could be a great program to do that. And actually the deputy chair of CMI Women is a lady called Jo Moffat. She's a senior partner at Atkins. She's one of those rare things, a female senior engineer. And she suggested that. So I think it's a great idea. I'll certainly be suggesting it to the engineering council, and let's see what happens. But meanwhile, you and your firms, you can say to your HR to people, let's look at all the women we've lost over the last 10 years that have left this firm. And why not start a returners program to get them back?
It is an idea, so I will definitely share this with my HR department at Rumble. So in terms of what is preventing us from achieving gender balanced workplace in our organizations, you already mentioned about culture. Is there anything else what is preventing us?
Loads of things. So unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. So there are lots of things. The biggest thing that gets in the way is culture. There are other things that get in the way. One is lack of targets. So, you guys are engineers. You would never undertake a project or a business project. We talked about the business case. And you would never undertake a business case without a target, right? And yet we do that all the time when we talk about gender balance. We don't set targets. So we need to set targets. These need to be set from the top. The second thing we need to do is look at our processes. We know that women are much less likely to get promoted than their male counterparts. And so, do you have equal promotion processes? Or are you stigmatizing women, for example, that may have more external caring responsibilities and therefore spend fewer long hours in the office? You also have to look at what your informal sponsorship programs are. So too often, men have greater access to sponsors than women do because, they play five-a-side football with the senior guys, or they go down the pub with the senior guys, whereas the women want to get home and cook dinner for their families. That holds women back. So we need more structured sponsorship programs for women. And these are all things that we can do to promote better gender balance. Like I say, there is no single, sorry, I'll turn my video off again and on, see if that fixes it.
Yes,
Is that better? Okay.
that's much more better.
That there is no single silver bullet. We need to do all of these things. Sponsorship programs, fair promotion processes, set targets for every quartile, right? So if you've got 40% at the bottom, why does it drop to 20%? Figure out why and fix it, right? The great thing is engineers love solving problems. This is a problem-solving exercise. But it is also about fixing culture. Very important. And that is an individual responsibility. And we'll come back to that.
Yes, so we just did discuss what can we do at the organization level. Let's just move a little bit down to the individuals level. So as the community of ACE emerging professionals, we are working to become future leaders in the industry and business with this passion for making a difference. And we still believe that the organizations we worked in are not diverse enough, and there's still a lot of work to do. So what are 3 things that individuals can do to boost gender balance in their organizations?
Right. Again, a great question. So what are the 3 things you can do? So firstly, if you are a female engineer or in construction or on this call, keep an achievement log. Log your achievements, because you might have a tendency not to do that, and you might have a tendency, therefore, not to advocate for yourself about asking for a promotion. And it's very important.
I think we lost Anne for a second, so let's give a little bit of time for
Keeping
Anne.
achievement logs
Okay.
is
Anne is
very
back.
important.
Mhm.
And then when you have your achievement log, go make an appointment to see your manager and say, I want to discuss my pathway to promotion, and agree. What do you need to do? You know, you have all your achievements. Here's what I've achieved, and what are the things I need to achieve over the next 6 to 12 months to get that promotion. So that would be one thing I would really advocate. The second thing I would very much advocate is take a look at your own situation, your own team, your own department, and make sure that you are aware of the gender balance within it, and challenge it. If it isn't gender balanced, if it's not, if it is, 80%, 90% male, then you have every right to challenge that and say, what can we do to make this better? And I think the third thing, and I know, Wojciech, you've done this, is call out the bad behaviors. So when you see, for example, a colleague, and this is, you're a man or a woman, you really need to do this. Say you see a colleague say, oh, Jane won't want that job. She's just had a baby. Well, you have to say to your colleague, how do you know that? Have you asked Jane? Have you had a conversation with Jane? Do you think you might have been leaping to a conclusion there? How do you think Jane would feel if you just said that about her without speaking to her? Because you have to call out that bad behavior. Now, in that example, that was, I'm sure, unintentional, right? I'm sure the colleague really didn't think, he just spoke, and it's probably almost always a he. But, there are some situations where colleagues do make deliberately gender biased remarks. Those need to be called out too. So everybody has a responsibility to call out the bad behavior. And that's because if you don't, you're complicit in it, and you'll never change the culture.
I completely agree. And now I wanted to move to a topic of men as change agents. And personally, I always thought that gender balance is a woman thing, right? Mm-hmm. And this has nothing to do with men. I've read your book, and your book completely changed my mind on this topic, and it proved me wrong. So considering that men are still the majority leaders in organizations, without engaging men's support as change agents and champions, we won't make any progress, right? So there's a lot men can do to be an active change agent, to be part and also to be part of the wider conversation to achieve better gender balanced workplace. Like few examples, like confronting or challenging the behaviors which are wrong or inappropriate. Being vocal about lack of diversity in the leadership team of our company, or like in any teams we work in, right? But also like becoming a mentor and sponsor, share your experience and support women in the personal development, and let's go together on this journey, right? But also very simple thing, even like avoiding pre-meeting sports banter and adjusting the subject that women feel more comfortable talking about this. So Anne, is there anything else men as change agents can do to boost gender balance?
I think that's a great list, Wojciech. It's a wonderful list. I agree with everything you said. And equally, I know, just turning this off again and turning it on, hopefully that's better. I know that you yourself did a great job of this, because you told me the story. And I would like you to share that story because it's very brave what you did. And I would challenge all the men on this call to do exactly as Wojciech did, because we can't be what we can't see. And one other reason so many women leave is they look and they see what you saw. So tell your story, please.
Oh yes, I was asked to join the team, and maybe because I've been educating myself in this topic. So if somebody's asking me to join the team, and I can see that in the team they are all males, certain age, and all white, for example, and there's no woman, for me it's like a sign. Okay, something is wrong. And my question is always, where is the diversity of thoughts, right? Because our company is requiring from us to innovate, to do things in a different way. So I've been in this situation where I needed to say something and say, okay, like, you know, where are women in this team, and like and I needed to call out the lack of diversity. So this is what I did, and it's only because of my awareness of the issue. That's the reason why I did it.
And I think that's a super brave thing to do. And congratulations. And, you know, everybody on this call, you can do that. So, you know, Wojciech was appointed to this leadership team. It was a great honor for him. But he told me he went on that call, and every other person on that call was a white man, a middle-aged man. And, you know, he called it out and said, gee, right, where are the women? and you don't have to be nasty, right? You just ask, gee, what, you know, where's the diversity here? And I think that's a great thing that you did. And that is the way of being an ally, because the main thing is, somebody said this, and I like this expression, you know, to ally is a verb, not a noun, right? So you have to be proactive. You have to do something. So you have to do like Wojciech did and call it out. If you are a male and you're going up on your career, find a talented young woman that really does great work. I'm sure you'll have many of them, and sponsor her. Create opportunities for her. You know, say, gee, we need to put, you know, Colleen on that project. She's awesome. She's done this, this, and this. It'll give her a stretch. You know, encourage Colleen to go for a promotion. You know, sponsor people, right? So what sponsors do is they advocate for people when they're not in the room. And far too few talented women have sponsors. They aren't at the five-a-side football or down the pub. They don't get them that organic way. So you have to be proactive in seeking them out. And if you are a young engineer, female, get yourself a sponsor, you know, and a sponsor, you know, you have to believe in you. So sponsors advocate for you when you're not in the room, and they create opportunities. So they're generally at least 2 levels above you, maybe sometimes even 3. If you can find a sponsor that will advocate for you and give you opportunity, you will go further in your career. So these are all things that you can do to change the picture. But the biggest single thing I really think is what Wojciech did. Call it out. And remember, just ask the question. You don't have to be mean. Or if somebody does say a disparaging remark, talk about how it makes you feel, or how it makes a colleague feel, like I did with the Jane example. You know, you can, nobody can deny your feelings. If you feel slighted, you can say to the person, maybe after the meeting, take them aside and say, I just wanted you to know how your remark made you feel. Could I ask you what you were you thinking when you made it? Sorry, how your remark made me feel. Can I ask you, what were you thinking when you made it? Right? And if you are a man and you hear a colleague, and you will hear all kinds of, you know, remarks, and you hear your colleagues making inappropriate remarks or exclusionary remarks, call it out. Say, guys, you know, we really should not be talking like this. Why did you say that? And I think it's really important.
And also, I would like to add this all about raising the awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and be this change person, and be an advocate for change. Okay, so now it's a great time to move to the Q&A part of our talk. I've spotted a good question in the chat box, so I will just read this through. Okay. So, question on country on country performance. So, we know that Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Finland are top performers when it comes to the best countries for gender equality. So why is the UK not among top performing countries for gender equality?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great question. The short answer is we don't have quotas, but it's more nuanced than that. So those countries, if you go back into the school age kids, there's a much more acute awareness of gender balance in school age children, and it works both ways. So young boys are encouraged to be parents and to see themselves as shouldering household chores and childcare, responsibilities. So they're very good at trying to remove gender stereotyping from schools. Whereas here, in a lot of schools, and you still have when the kids dress up, the boys are all Spider-Men and the girls are all princesses. And that's the teachers don't stop that, right? So it's about less gender stereotyping from an early age, but it is also about processes and structures throughout that really encourage that, including laws, right? Those countries have some of the most advanced laws. So, for example, in Iceland, all companies have to undergo gender pay audits. And if there's a discrepancy in what you pay your men versus women, you're fined. So there's a lot more proactive, it's about transparency with teeth. You have to measure it, but if you don't abide by it, there are consequences. So I think what the UK is very good at is transparency. The gender pay reporting is very good. What we're not so good at is the teeth. There's no consequences. So we have to start to introduce greater consequences for companies that do not make progress on gender balance. And that, to my mind, should absolutely include, for example, could include fines or lack of access to government funds, etc.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Anne, do you feel that maternity leave has an influence on women coming back to work? Do you think this period of time out of work makes a big difference on promotions?
So it's an interesting question. There are studies that show that yes, there is a motherhood penalty, but it's mostly because of the lack of flexibility in coming back. So what happens is people might come back into part-time work and then they get off the career ladder because nobody will promote part-time workers. Again, that's a fallacy. We need to also be much more inclusive as to, how we say people are ready for promotion and promote more on the basis of achievements and potential rather than presenteeism. How long have you been in the job? Because that disadvantages women. So I think that's a very important point. But the other thing that we've also seen is that culture still, even for women that don't have children, is a barrier for advancement. Now, all of this has gotten worse in COVID because we know that the caring responsibilities and the household responsibilities fell more on women than men. They did 60% more household and schooling than their male counterparts. So again, what that means is when you're looking at how you're treating people, you can't just assume that your female colleagues are going to be able to attend all those meetings and all those hours if they have caring and homeschooling responsibilities. And also, you have to encourage the men to get more involved in the caring and home responsibilities. So parental leave rather than maternity leave, should be an equal policy that applies to men as well as women, and men need to feel that their careers will not suffer if they take it up. So getting men more involved in family and caring and household is the same side of the coin as getting more women able to progress their careers. And actually, most men enjoy getting more involved with their families. And this COVID time, new fathers have said to me how delighted they are able to be home with their babies instead of traveling on the road or endless hours spent in the clients or on the office or on the site. So there are, real advantages that we've seen during COVID that we need to keep up as we come out of COVID.
Okay, thank you. Next question. As soon as you put a quota on gender balance, there's the risk that women are perceived to be promoted because of their gender, not their talent and capability. What can be done to mitigate this?
Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is that we're not dealing with a level playing field. If we were dealing with a level playing field, then you wouldn't have a glass pyramid. So there are studies that show, and just to put some numbers on it, this is again a corporate study done in the US, that at an entry level, about 37% of the entry level was at the top, suddenly 67% are white men. That is the only group that grows, that has an inverse pyramid. Everybody else, so say women, it was like 35% women at entry level, 17% women at the top. Black women, 17% entry level, 3% at the top. So we are not dealing with a level playing field. And if you're not dealing with a level playing field, you have to take corrective action to level the playing field. Otherwise, you're never going to change it. So what is happening is that those women of color and men of color are being actively disadvantaged. And the only way you're going to correct that is to promote more of them. And so the simple answer I would say is just promote proportionately, at least, because if you have 50% in the bottom quartile, why don't you have 50% in the top quartile? On the basis that on average, your talent will be equally spread, which of course it is. So that's, and the other thing you can do is take the threat away and say, this is about creating a better culture and better opportunity for everybody. So this is what we're trying to do here. It's your business case.
Mm-hmm. It's business case. Thank you. Another question. There are many examples, particularly in how people speak, of unconscious male default thinking throughout society and our industry. What kind of proactive things can everyone do to combat male default thinking?
Well, it's back to challenging it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, there are actually, technology is more helpful here. So there are technology apps now you can use to screen your job descriptions, and they'll tell you if the job descriptions are using gender biased language. So for example, if you advertise for coding ninjas, you're not going to get a lot of female applicants.
No.
Because, it doesn't appeal to be a coding ninja. If driving results-oriented, robust rainmakers, you're not going to get a lot of female applicants. So you can challenge the language that is used in job descriptions. You can make sure that every job is flexible by default, and because it's about outcomes, not FaceTime. So you can just make sure that all your job adverts build in flexibility, especially also since COVID has proven we're all fine, working flexibly, and actually men as well as women want to work flexibly. So that's another thing you can do. And then you can challenge those things. So when people do things like, say, Jane won't want that job because she's a woman, or an action, say somebody grabbing, this actually happened, grabbing an iPhone out of a young woman's hand and giving it to the man in the room because the person assumed that she wouldn't understand the app. You can just say, hang on a minute, Jane is actually in charge here. I think you need to let her have a look at that app. So it's just challenging those default behaviors that we all see. Oftentimes they're not malicious, but if they go unchallenged, we will never change culture.
Okay, thank you. And we still have time for the last question. It's a long one. So recently I watched a program which looked at gender differences in primary school kids. When asked to rate their chances to overcome a challenge, the boys rated themselves up in the 8 or 10 scale, while the girls rated themselves much lower in the 5, at the level 5 or 6. I see this depreciation continuing through females in their career. What is the best way to boost our female colleagues to ensure that they rate themselves and their abilities higher?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are, as a society, we condition women to doubt themselves more than we do men. And I think that there are two things. One is keeping that achievement log, right? So encouraging women to be more cognizant of what they have achieved, and to keep that log so they're able to actually keep track of it. And the second thing is teaching young women how to fail. So men and young boys, if you think about it, it just takes sports as an example. They're playing rugby, they get knocked down, and they just are told they've got to get up and get on with it, right? Women don't have, young girls don't have that much of that experience to fail, to get back up and get on with it. And we need to learn, and young women need to learn, that it's absolutely fine to fail, and that you just learn from it and get better. So on the one hand, keep better track of your achievements, and on the other hand, learn that it's okay to fail.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. What are your thoughts of women in the industry being from an ethnic minority?
Well, I said that 12% of engineers are women. I know that 6% are from an ethnic minority, and that stat that I know that women of color have even a tougher time advancing than women overall, and so I think that it makes it even harder, and that means that a lot of that what we've been talking about here, about creating inclusive cultures, sponsoring people, making sure that you focus on outcomes, not face time, making sure that your teams are diverse and that you're welcoming and appreciative of everybody. And that means, for example, that if you have women from some cultures never speaking up in meetings, that you say, let's find out what you think. What do you think? And give them the opportunity to give them a voice. So don't just assume that because they never say anything that they don't have anything to say. So it's really going out of your way. And also, the other thing that you can all do, and I encourage you to do, is ask your colleagues that are women. Ask your colleagues that come from ethnic minorities. Just one question. How does it feel to work here? And then listen to their answers. Because when you ask people what their lived experience is, I guarantee you're going to surface some of the cultural issues that are preventing progress, because they're going to share. Obviously, you have to make sure they can do it safely with no repercussions. They're going to share how they feel, and you're going to learn from how they feel, and you're going to be able to work together to change it.
Okay, that was very powerful. Thank you so much, Anne. We don't have any more questions, so I think we are going to start closing out. But before, I wanted to share like my thoughts. So I think there are two things that everybody should be doing after listening to this digital talk. First thing is setting a good example in your own organization by calling your own company to account and your own team to account. And secondly, do something about it on a broader scale and raise the awareness of the importance of achieving a gender balanced workplace. And do you agree with me? Would you like to add anything else?
I think those are both great examples. And I think, the other thing is, this is not solved, right? You will encounter a lot of people that will say, oh, gender, we've been there and done that. The facts say otherwise. So, just looking at the evidence base. And as you say, calling your companies to account and calling your teams to account and calling yourselves to account. And, if you've enjoyed the tips here, and I know Wojciech was very kind, but do check out the book. It's on Amazon.
I've got it on my desk, so very very insightful. I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Okay, and so thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our ACE Emerging Professionals community. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this conversation interesting and insightful. Just a reminder that we have recorded this session and we'll send you a link to the recording later today. And finally, do keep an eye on the ACE website for upcoming events. And I can share with you now that the next webinar will be a roundtable discussion being held on 23rd of June to celebrate International Women in Engineering Day. The discussion will be focused on the way the pandemic has impacted women in our sector. You are all invited and you can register on our website. So see you next time and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Bye.
Bye.